Here's what you're missing over at patreon.com/Addressing Gettysburg.
You're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this episode of Addressing Gettysburg. And today we have a friend of ours who's come back to talk. I think this is his third time on the show. And we're talking about another one of his books, Retreat from Gettysburg, Lee, Logistics, and the Pennsylvania Campaign. Please welcome to the show, Kent Masterson Brown. Hello, Kent.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming on.
I like the peanut gallery back there.
That's our buddy Mike Lentz, and he of course read your book voraciously, read right through it there, and Mike has the ability to read books at a rate that I haven't been able to do in 25 years.
I'm a slow, plodding reader.
Yes,
I'll tell you, I'll be the first to admit.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Do you think that comes from your training as a lawyer? Like you got to parse every word?
I think it does to a degree, although I was a slow, plodding reader before I became a lawyer. but let's put it this way. I don't think it helped any.
Right. Okay. All right.
It did help in a lot of other aspects we can go into, but not that.
Right. Right. I gotcha. Yeah. All right, so this book here about the retreat, it came out in 2005. What in the chronology of your books? Where does this place? Is it second book or?
Well, I published two books before that one, and one was Cushing of Gettysburg,
right.
Story of a Union artillery commander, and the other one was the Civil War in Kentucky. Battle for the Bluegrass State.
Gotcha.
And then I came out with Retreat. But Retreat took a long time, to assemble because of all the research you had to do in original material. Because there's nothing anyone's ever done on it.
Right.
So you had to just do this from scratch.
Yeah. It's like a jigsaw puzzle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So how long did it take you?
Well, I would imagine, now this might sound shocking, but I would imagine it took something like 11 years.
Wow.
And that's just, here, I'm actively practicing law, and, you just don't say goodbye to all your clients and go off to Washington and dig around the archives.
Right.
You get fired for doing that.
Yes. You got it.
And
right.
Your malpractice carrier doesn't like that either.
No, I would imagine not. So you have to do it in your free time.
Yes, yeah, I did it catch as catch can, so it's not like it took 11 years to put all that together. It was over the course of that time is what it took to assemble what was necessary to make a book.
I would imagine that to be an author, especially an author of a history book, the most important thing that you need to have is patience.
Oh, boy.
Right?
All the way through it.
My ADD would not allow me to take 11 years to write anything. Like, I just couldn't do it. I
had a very patient press.
Yeah, I bet you did.
And with Mead at Gettysburg, I challenged him even more.
Yeah. How long did that one take you?
Well, from the time I ended Retreat from Gettysburg. Now, I published a couple of books in between, but I came out with Mead at Gettysburg in June 2021, and here I ended, got published, Retreat from Gettysburg in 2005. And they asked me right after that, what would you like to do next after the Retreat came out? And I said, I'd like to write something on George Mead. I've gained a healthy respect for him.
Okay.
And so that piqued their interest, and and so they said, well, go right ahead, So it just takes a lot of time. It just does to do this kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. And so you gained a respect for Mead from doing this book.
Yes.
So the first question I want to ask you then is, did Mead not do enough after winning the Battle of Gettysburg? Did he do exactly what he could have and should have done given the conditions he had to deal with, or what?
Well, that's the answer, what you just said. He did exactly what you should do with what he had, given the condition of that army. And as I point out in that book, his army was famished. I mean, it had not eaten in days, men or horses or mules. And the horses and mules take 14 pounds of oats a day. Mules really don't like oats much, but they'll eat a mixed grain of 14 pounds a day, and they'll eat 14 pounds of hay a day.
Yep.
And imagine trying to supply an army with 60,000 horses and mules.
No, it's unfathomable. I mean, like I can't understand that.
And the reason Meade doesn't have anything is that on his movement north, when he was planning to defend a line along Big Pipe Creek from Manchester all the way to Emmitsburg, or Middleburg, really, as it turned out to be, he set up a supply depot at Westminster because it's a railhead from Baltimore.
Right.
And he could get supplies to Westminster, which would be 7 miles to the rear of his lines at Pipe Creek, and 3 miles to the rear at Union Mills, which was where the railroad actually curved down and ended after it stopped at Westminster. The problem with it is that when Meade had to rush that army to Gettysburg and give up the Pipe Creek line, he now had at Gettysburg a supply depot that was 22 miles in his rear and was under attack the entire time Meade was there. So there was nothing coming anywhere. Even though they had ample supplies down there, they couldn't get them to the army.
And that, so it's under attack by whom? Or by who?
Well, by Dick Ewell's Corps. See, the Baltimore Pike runs along Cemetery Hill, Cults Hill.
I see what you're saying. Okay,
Yeah,
I thought you meant Westminster was under attack, and I was like,
No.
Okay,
The Pike, the Baltimore Pike,
yes,
that connects Gettysburg to Westminster was under attack the entire time Meade was there.
Sure, gotcha. Okay,
So it was shut down. So
Right.
nothing was getting up. He couldn't even get messages by like Pony Express horse riders that they set up along that Baltimore Pike. He couldn't even get messages to the government for fear of them being captured.
right. So, So his army is in really bad shape at the end of the Battle of Gettysburg. Now, let's pause there because we'll come back to that point. But first, let's rewind to before the Battle of Chancellorsville and let's switch sides to the Army of Northern Virginia, because there would be no Battle of Gettysburg if Robert E. Lee hadn't had the balls to come up here into the North. What is the condition of Lee's army prior to the Battle of Chancellorsville?
It is serious. It is in serious trouble. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
You don't see evidence of a looming disaster because of it with Lee's army, like you do with Meade's after Gettysburg. And I do want to come back to that.
Yeah, we will.
But with Lee, his overarching concern after Chancellorsville was, I've got to feed this army. And he can't get it in Virginia because it's been, eaten out by both armies.
Right.
And so one of the things I love to point out in the retreat book is what Lee was like. And as a commander, he would do whatever was necessary to keep the army intact. And he was being asked by the president and the War Department to move elements of his army, this is after Chancellorsville, to the west. And Lee stalled him and then just set his army in motion north. And when they found out about it in Richmond, there were messages coming to him, you're leaving us completely open to enemy attack here. And Lee says, don't worry about it. You've got plenty of local troops to take care of it. I mean, really, he's and almost daring them to say, we order you to come back.
Right.
He knew they would not.
Right. Well,
so what is he doing here? He's taking his army north to forage it.
Yeah.
He's going to use the enemy territory to feed that army. And he does. He gets across the Potomac. As a matter of fact, Dick Ewell's corps gets up all the way to York, up to Carlisle. And what are they doing up there? Well, they're foraging. Mm-hmm. They're looking for fodder for their horses and mules. They're looking for food for their men. They're looking for everything. And it's interesting. During the course of my research on the retreat, I got a telephone call from John Koski, who was the head of the Museum of the Confederacy Archives, back when there was a Museum of the Confederacy.
Right.
And he called me up and he says, Kent, we have in our collection, I just noticed, a couple of large papers that were put together during the invasion of Pennsylvania. And he says what they appear to be are statements showing how much of each article they were searching for did they receive and from whom. And I go, you've got to be kidding me. He goes, no. He says, well, come on over here and take a look. So I did. I got in a car and I drove to Richmond, Virginia. Wow. Now, I may have left a client there in the office. I don't really give a damn. This was more important.
Yeah.
And I got over there and here they were still in their red strings. They had never been opened.
Wow. Really?
And I opened them up and these huge, I would say like a yard wide and a yard long. I mean, they're enormous papers. And on the top, it had all the articles that Lee's army wanted. And it goes from oats, corn, mixed grains of all kinds, then 4 horse wagons, 6 horse wagons, horses, mules, cattle, sheep. The whole everything an army would need, and it even had pencils and paper.
So
one
they
thing
really
about
had
the
nothing.
Army is you'll learn about paperwork when you're in the Army.
Yeah, right.
That's always the greatest down for most general officers when they have to learn all they got is paperwork to do.
Right.
But it's necessary.
Yeah.
And then on the left side of these papers were all the names of the farmers or residents where they got them. And then how much of each article was taken from that guy and how much was paid for. That was on the right side of the columns. So there you are. I mean, they even knew going in exactly what they needed, and it was targeted. And this is what we want. This is what we desperately need. So to make it a long story short here, when the fighting ends at Gettysburg, where George Meade's army is on the brink of collapsing due to lack of forage, lack of food, Lee's army has been fed.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that if you look at the division hospitals that we know of Lee's army at Gettysburg, those division hospitals were set up as the army came onto the field. Each element of the army came onto the field, and they were set up by divisions. And around those hospitals, they were usually about 2 to 3 miles behind the battle lines. And around those hospitals were all the quartermaster trains and subsistence trains of each division. So that when the fighting ended, you not only had a place to take your wounded, but you also had a place where your men could get fed. And poor Mead, he gets up there after literally scrambling to
Listen to the rest of this interview and dozens like it. Support the show and get early access to special episodes, early and discounted ticket sales, and more. The second lieutenant level and above gets access to all monthly Patreon episodes. So please go to patreon.com/addressinggettysburg, choose a tier, and join. And I thank you in advance.